The question is, how do you go with motivation when you get injuries early on and you feel like it keeps hampering your progress? So here's someone who started an exercise program, they've got injured early and it's stopped their consistency, it's stopped their long-term exercising. It's important to understand that injuries happen. We get these niggles, we get these big injuries. These things happen and they are part of life, whether we're talking exercise or not. Now, sometimes when you start an exercise program, what it can do is almost expose underlying issues that you had. Because prior, when you were leading a more sedentary life, you didn't have the stimulus which maybe brought to the surface the fact that there was some imbalance there. So injuries can be diagnosed by exercise really well, brought them to the surface so we can work on them before they then become chronic. They are part of what we do, but there is a net gain. Maybe your health is damaged 1% because of a minor niggle or injury, but the benefits you get from exercise are 50%. So there's a huge net gain there in terms of what we can do. An injury is something that happens to us. So injuries are neither good nor bad, and we shouldn't try and label them as such. So we shouldn't say an injury is a bad thing. What can be bad is our perception of that injury. So there's a stimulus, an injury, we respond to that, and we get to choose how we respond. Now this is easy to say, but it can be in practice a lot more difficult. But this can be helped along by taking advantage of some of the benefits of injury and turning it to our advantage. Let's talk about that, but first let's talk about the fact that a lot of people tend to view exercise as an absolutist thing, as a black and white, as a binary thing. And they're either exercising really well, they're eating really well, they're getting plenty of sleep, life is good, or everything is falling apart. And sometimes when our health is concerned, we have all these dominoes lined up, and if we just knock one domino down, we stop exercising, we therefore stop eating as well, we don't get enough sleep, we stay up later watching TV, maybe we start smoking again. And of course, if you're not exercising, it's all the more reason that the other things have to be still up, that those other dominoes have to remain lined up, because we need them even more to compensate for the health benefits that we're not getting from a good exercise program. So try not to be too black and white, try not to be too absolutist, and also understand that by not being as absolutist, by having a grey area in the middle, injury doesn't equal stop. Injury doesn't mean you stop exercising. It's not a case of I either exercise or I don't. There are modifications that we can make. And a lot of people don't realize that there is a path that we can take through injury, that it's not a roadblock, it's just a detour or a speed bump. There is still plenty of things we can do. It's not an invitation to stop exercising. So I think one of the first things we can look at is see injury as an opportunity. Let's talk about what some of those opportunities may be. Maybe you can take it as an opportunity to work on a weakness. So maybe if you have a shoulder injury, so you can't do a lot of work in your upper body, what a great opportunity to work on building some skills in other areas in your lower body. Maybe you're going to build a lot of strength in your squat. Maybe you can lift a lot more weights because you're biasing towards that area of your health and your fitness instead of doing the upper body work. So there's an injury opportunity there. Maybe you can build your work capacity, that cardiorespiratory endurance, the cardiovascular health, which has huge impacts both from a long-term health point of view and a short-term exercise and performance point of view. You can build these new skills, but you can also actually modify your training around injury. And again, like I said, it's not binary. It's not you either exercise or you don't. We can make some changes to what you're doing. And at Range of Motion, we've put together a hierarchy of injury modification. This is basically a series of steps that you go through where you take a movement and you say, right, can I do the modification to this movement at the top of the list? If you can't, you go to that next item on the list. Can I do this modification? It's still the same sort of movement, training the same sort of thing. You're still getting the same intent and healthy stimulus out of your exercise program. If you can't do that, you go to the next on the list. And you work your way down the list until you can find a version of that movement that you can do. This allows you to keep exercising. And a big thing it does is it gives you back that control. It starts to wrestle back that control. You get control back over your own health instead of being pushed around by the injury. And sometimes the lack of exercise with people when they do get injured comes from a lack of perceived control. You have a lot of control. So let's quickly run through those 7 steps of this injury modification hierarchy. First thing, can you lift a little bit lighter? If you have a back injury, can you maybe deadlift a little lighter that doesn't aggravate the back? No, if you can't do that, then maybe reduce the volume. Instead of doing 10 reps, do 5 reps. Maybe that's going to help the back. If that doesn't work, you can start to reduce the speed or the power of the movement. So slow it down so you get time to feel that feedback from your body to avoid those points of pain. Maybe you can reduce the range of motion, how far you're lifting that weight off the ground in that deadlift. So instead of starting with the bar set from the ground, maybe you can put it on a couple of boxes, on a couple of blocks, so you're only doing the top half of the deadlift. And maybe the top half of the deadlift is completely fine on the lower back. If that's still aggravating you, change the type of contraction you're doing. Now, this is something you can work with a trainer or a coach. Look at maybe if you just pick it up and then drop the bar, because you only get back pain maybe when you lower the bar. Or it could be vice versa. Maybe you only get pain when you lift it up, but lowering slowly can be okay. And this can still be a great way to build strength. So we have a lot of options there. In our next step, if that's still causing aggravation, we can look at changing the type of movement that you're doing, changing the movement but still having the same sort of stimulus. So did you know that if you push a prowler or pull a sled walking forward, that will work a lot of the same muscle groups as doing a deadlift, but you're not picking up a weight off the ground. So although you're working the same muscle groups, you're giving the same stimulus, which is then going to give you the same sort of impact, the same sort of end result. You can do this, still train the same movement, but not aggravate the back. And finally, our last step, if all of these things still aggravate it, we can just avoid that movement completely, but maybe work on the opposite limb. So if you have an injury in one elbow, you can work on the other arm, do the same movements, but single arm only. And this gives us what's called cross education. And it's this principle that if you exercise the left arm, you will actually hold on to a lot of your strength in the right arm, because strength isn't just about the building of muscles, it's about turning on those correct nerves, those correct pathways through your brain to fire the nerves to cause those muscles to take action. So we can hold on to a lot of our strength without even using the injured limb. I think to sum up the injury stuff, it often leads to an all or nothing approach. If I'm injured, I can't exercise. If I'm healthy, I can exercise. And it's absolutely not an all or nothing approach. The mistake that people make here is they judge their progress or their success on perfection. If they haven't done a perfect exercise session with exactly what's written, then it's judged as a failure. Either they do everything as they should and it's perfect, or they do one thing tiny wrong and it's a complete waste of time. Again, we're so binary in our thinking, but this is not the case at all. So here's my tip to you. If you're struggling with motivation with exercise, judge the success of your exercise on the fact that you turned up. It's not about how well you did. If you turned up and you did a single squat, that goes down as a win. If instead of running 5 kilometers, you're only able to walk 200 meters, judge that as a success, because you turned up. And it's turning up that builds habits, these tiny little mini habits that allow us to create long-term behavior change. Judge your success on turning up, not on the magnitude of your accomplishments.